Okay. Okay, so good morning, class. I welcome you all to my class. All good with everyone? Everyone is
Yes,
fine?
ma'am.
Okay. So, yesterday we were talking about, we discussed some of the things like terms related to, taxonomical terms which were related to the androecium, gynoecium. Then we were studying the types of ovary depending on the direction of micropylor opening. Then we also studied, different fruit types, and for that we covered inflorescence types, just a broad overview of each of those, right? Okay, so today we are going to do palynology, as I was telling, because it's something new to all of you. So I think you will find it really interesting. Okay, so palynology is basically the study of pollen grains, and I'm sure most of you haven't come across this term, and it's going to be a new topic for you today. So I'm not repeating yesterday's class. Maybe we'll revise it some other day. So I'll start right away from palynology part. So palynology is actually it is a study of different features of pollen grains. Okay. So what are pollen grains? Okay. So they're bearing the male gamete, right? So pollen grains are very important for plants because they're responsible for taking forward the reproductive ability or property of a plant, right? So, pollen grains are extremely important, and to study the characteristics of pollen grain is another important factor because when you are identifying plants, you will see that there are different types of pollen grains also. Just like we saw that there are too much variation in other characters or other, features of a plant, you would see that even in case of pollen grains, there are a lot of different features, okay, to observe. And definitely there are certain categories of different features of pollen grains which will help you identify a plant, because many a times you will see that certain characters of pollen grain, they are like more specific for certain types of plants, or belonging to certain families. So therefore palynology is very important. And if you can also take up palynology as a specialization in your masters, if you feel like, if you really find it interesting. Okay. So another very interesting application of palynology, you would see that it's also used, applied in case of forensic science. What is forensic science? Anyone has got any idea about forensic science? Any one of you? Did you hear about forensics? Or you might have watched it in movies or anywhere.
CID.
Yeah, kind of. So it is basically, investigating any criminal, incident. Okay, so that's forensics. Forensics, it's a broad term, and it includes a lot of investigation. Then whatever examination is done, many a times the criminal, like most of the times the criminal is missing and you need to find out the criminal. So in that case what the CID does is, yeah, actually, and there is a, you must have seen that there are scientists who actually work in lab technically in the forensics, because many a times you would find samples from the criminal which needs to be investigated, because they will give you the clues, for like who is responsible for the this thing, for the maybe a murder or whatever. So therefore forensics are very crucial as far as criminal investigation is concerned. So how is palynology useful in that sense? So many a times you would see that uh, okay, this is little like, you can imagine that most murders or certain things like that, they take place in isolated places. Okay, so many a times it could be in the woods or in the in the forest areas or in isolated places. And obviously trees are everywhere. So these pollen, it might get attached to, maybe the shoes, or maybe uh, they are so tiny, they won't be, you cannot see them through naked eyes always, but there can be samples which are there, which can provide clues for, who's the criminal and stuff like that. So therefore palynology study is important, because once you know about different types of pollen, and suppose you get shoes, or or you get some sample of pollen grains from where, from the murder scene, and then that sample actually matches from the residential area, the plants which are there in the residential area of the murderer, so something like that, so palynology is important in forensics as well. So there are a lot of applications, and yes, some people are allergic to pollen grains. So there again, if you know about pollen grains, you might be able to help the person. So palynology has a wide range of applications. Some of them you might have heard before, and some of them you might not. Maybe whatever I told you just now, so you've heard it for the first time. So yes, it is very different and very interesting. So the process of liberation of pollen grains from anther is called anthesis. Okay. So by definition, you should be knowing what is anthesis. So anthesis is nothing but the the way the pollen grains get ejected from the anther. So that procedure is known as anthesis. Okay. So the mechanism of transference of pollen grains from the anther to stigma is definitely, we all know it as pollination, right? So pollination is very important for any kind of, for fertilization process and in plants. So pollination is a very crucial step. Without pollination, we cannot imagine of, getting the next generation of plants. So therefore pollination is very important aspect of the production in plants. Okay. So now what is specifically fertilization? What do you mean by the term fertilization? Any one of you, not from plants point of view, but then what is fertilization? It comes from the term fertile, right? So what is fertilization? Any one of you?
Ma'am, the fusion of male and female
And female gamete.
To form zygote.
Yes, yes. Okay, basically, yes, male and female gametes, that's more specific to plants. But yes, in case of like, if we talk about fertilization, as she said that, yes, it is the formation of zygote. Okay, so the end product is actually zygote formation of any fertilization process. So yes, of course, there are other things also. In case of plants, we see the endosperm is also formed due to double fertilization. But in a more specific way, fertilization means the formation of zygote by by the marriage or fusion of the male and female gametes. Okay, so very right. Thank you both of you. So yes, now pollination, we know that there are different types of pollinations also. So even in our school times, we have studied that there is something which is called cross pollination. Okay, so something that is called self pollination. So when does self pollination happen? Any one of you? Okay, just I'll select someone. Roll number 7. Roll number 7. Am I audible? Okay, roll number 12. Am I audible? Roll number 12. Are you there, dear? Okay, can you people hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Two of them are not responding. I thought it's not audible. Okay, roll number 26.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, can you tell me that what do you mean by self-pollination? It's a very concept we study in school time also.
Yes, ma'am. In self pollination, the pollen from the anther of a flower is transferred to the stigma of the same flower, or the different flower also of the same plant.
On the same plant. Absolutely right. Thank you, dear. So absolutely right. That is self-pollination. And what do you mean by cross-pollination? I want someone else to respond now. Bhavana. How do I pronounce it? Is it Bhavana or is it Bhavna?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, dear. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it Bhavna or is it Bhavana? What is it?
It's Bhavana.
Bhavna? Okay. Can you tell me what is cross-pollination, dear?
Ma'am, it is the pollination of a flower where pollens from and pollens comes from another flower or the plant.
Yes. Of other plant, okay? Of a different plant, right? Okay. Okay. Thank you, dear. So, these were the two broad categories of pollination which we were already aware of, right? So, most of us knew this. But there are certain terms which you need to know in respect to, the types of pollination. So, here the pollination, if the pollination takes place internally when the flowers are closed. So, suppose the flower has not opened and even then the pollination is taking place, it's called cleistogamy. Cleisto terms means closed and gamy means again marriage or fusion. So cleistogamy means pollination taking place internally when the flower is closed. Okay. Now pollination takes place when the flowers are open is chasmogamy, whereas a deposition of pollen from on the stigma of the same flower is autogamy. Autogamy is another name for self-pollination. Okay, so self-auto means self, right? So if you're asked about another synonymous term for self-pollination, then you should be able to write it as autogamy, right? So what about pollen deposited directly from anthers on the receptive stigma? So it's called the direct pollination. Okay. Now, deposition of pollen on the stigma of another flower. So, this is another term for cross-pollination. So, we now know different, new terms for self-pollination and cross-pollination. So, it can be autogamy or self-pollination and allogamy or cross-pollination. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if the pollination is done by another flower, if the pollination occurs by another flower of the same inflorescence on the same plant, then it's called, this is more specific, okay? So in that case, it's called geitonogamy, okay? Geitonogamy, okay? Then pollination by pollen from another plant is known as xenogamy, right? Okay. Now we are going to study the different types of pollination based on the pollinators or the agents of pollination. So we were aware of the fact that there are certain agents of pollination like wind, water, insects. So now we would know some new terms. Okay, so try to remember these terms. Okay, they can come as short questions even in competitive exams. So you can expect questions from this part. Okay, so pollination by wind is termed as anemophily, whereas pollination by water is termed as hydrophily. So hydrophily, it's easy to remember because the prefix hydro refers to water. So therefore you can remember it easily as hydrophily, right? So what about pollinating agents? If the pollinating agent or the pollinators are animals, so you know that zoo is the term which we use to address animals. So zoophily is therefore the term which is used for pollination, type of pollination which is carried out by animals. Okay. Now, within zoophily is an umbrella term in this respect. We have a lot of other, subterms which comes under it. Like pollination by birds is known as ornithophily, whereas by bats it's called chiropterophily. Okay. So bats belong to the Chiroptera family of the animal kingdom, therefore the term Chiropterophily, okay? Then what about pollination by snails or slugs? They are called melacophily, okay? And what about insects? Entomophily, right? So these are some of the terms which you can know for for your knowledge, as well as you can whatever the important terms could be remembered for exam purpose, or for your knowledge for a competitive exams as well, okay? Now we come to pollen morphology. So pollen morphology is, I think, a new thing for all of you. So are you doing this for the first time? Have you done pollen morphology before? No, no.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, so this is completely a new thing for you. So I'll go slow and try to understand. So pollen morphology. So we will study about the composition of pollen grains here. Okay. So what about now? There are different types based on the composition of pollen grains. So we will study about monads, we will study about diodes, we will study about tetrads, polyads, and pollinia. Okay. So what are these? Now we'll come to each of the terms one by one, right? So monads are when each pollen grain is independent from each other. So there are single units of these pollen grains, right? So they are separable from each other. So in that case, you will say they are monads. Okay. What about diodes? Diodes means the four cells resulting from meiotic division of one pollen mother cell are separated into two bicellular masses of pollen grains. So as you can see, look at the picture on the right hand side. Can you see that there are two attached lobes of this single pollen grain, right? So therefore diodes, the term diodes means two, right? So it relates to two. So here you can see that the meiotic division has helped in formation of two bicellular masses of pollen grains. Okay, so they look fused at some point. So this is called diodes. Monads, look at the in contrast, you can look at the figure of the monads. Okay, they appear as single units of pollen grains, and definitely don't get confused by the shapes, because pollen grains can appear in different shapes as well, which we are going to study after a while. Okay. So in case of monads, they appear as single units. They look like single units, whereas diodes, they look like fused, partners. So there are two units together in case of diodes. Okay. What about tetrad? So tetrad term, so you would see that the terminology is such that it will help you to remember the terms itself or the meaning of the pollen grain type. Okay. So tetrad, like in monads, mono means one, di means two, tetra means four, right? So here, as the name suggests, so you can expect that there are four cells which are resulting from the division, and here, as you can see that there are different types of these tetrads in the figures, as you can see. So from different angles, they can look in different way. So these, in all these cases, it's called tetrad. Okay. So here again, there are different types. They can be linear, as in the first diagram. In the second diagram, you can see that it is in the shape of a T. So it's a T type of T-shaped tetrad. In the third one, you can see it's in the form of a square. So it's square-shaped tetrad, right? And tetrahedral is the final one. So you can see three from this angle, but there will be another, lobe at the back side. So from one angle, you will be able to see only three at a time in case of tetrahedral type of tetrad. Okay. Now, what about poly? Now, polyads are, poly means multiple, right? So, multiple, if the pollen grains are, they are divided into different, multiple segments or masses, they are called as polyads. Okay. So, as per, you can see the terminologies are as per the definition. So, and vice versa. So, if you look at the terms, you can understand that it means they have been named according to the way they are arranged. Okay, so what about pollinia? Pollinia is another new term for you. It means that all pollen grains in the same pollen chamber are united together into one mass. So they look like, a grape like appearance. You would see that it's a bunch of pollen together. They are clubbed together, so forming a mass, single mass. In that case, it is called as pollinia. Okay. So gradually we'll get used to the terms. Now we come to pollen morphology more specifically. So pollen morphology, morphology means what? The external appearance, right? So in case of pollen, so what exactly is the external architecture of the pollen is something we are going to study now. So when you see it through your naked eye, you hardly can observe that there are structures even present on pollens. But actually, if you perform a microscopic examination of the same, you would see that pollens have beautiful architectures as well, and they are very specific to certain plant families as well, based on which you can identify plants better. Okay. So what about pollen morphology? So we are going to, so the sporoderm, it's called sporoderm stratification. Like the pollen morphology, the another term for its description is called sporoderm stratification. I will come to it. So stratification means architecture here, means the way it is the structure of the, pollen, the external structure of the pollen. So as you can see, that the pollen, can you see the diagram, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. So okay, can you see the terms or should I zoom it a little more? Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now, see, the the innermost layer of the, we'll go from the inner to the outermost layer gradually. So if you look at the pollen, sporoderm layer, it's called the sporoderm, means the, it's actually the layer of the pollen, okay, which we are going to study. And there are different segments of this layer. So this sporoderm comprises of different structures and different layers of arrangement. So if we start from the innermost layer, the innermost layer is called intine. Okay, so as you can see, it has been labeled. The innermost layer is called intine. Okay, followed by the mediane layer. So the mediane layer has, it's actually after intine you would find the nexine layer. So the nexine has again two categories, nexine 1 and nexine 2. These are the two layers of nexine. So nexine 2 is specifically known as mediane. So mediane is like after intine comes mediane or nexine 2, followed by nexine 1. Then you would find the ectexine region, which is actually the also called sexine region. Okay, so the sexine region, as you can see, is a broad layer. Okay, so in this broad layer there are different parts. So the first part, first layer, which is starting from the bottom, is the vacuole. Okay, so the vacuole layer are the layers which are, it's the region in between the columella. Columella are these, column like structures, as you can see in between. So the columella and the vacuole comprise, as well as the tectum, which is the outermost layer of this sexine or ectexine, which is these three, tectum, columella and vacuole comprise the ectexine region of the pollen sporoderm. Okay, so then after, so the outermost layer comprise of, this spine, or there can be other, stratifications on this, or architecture of different, they can be of different designs and architectures. So they may be granular like these, they may be wart like, they may be spine like, so they can be spiny. So you will find different kinds of architecture on pollen grains, right? So if you look at them under the, through the microscope, only then you would be able to see it so prominently. Otherwise, through the naked eye, it's not it's not visible, but it is really interesting that such a small structure, but you can see that there is so much of the architecture is so defined. Okay, there are different levels here. So this makes the study of pollen morphology very interesting. So now, so see the exine sculpture. So exine is the outermost layer, right? So exine is the outermost layer. So after first you find intine, then you find nexine, then you find sexine, then you find the exine layer. Okay. So from the innermost to the outermost layer. So now the exine has different sculptures, which I was talking about. So it is the outermost layer of the pollen sporoderm. Okay. So it can be smooth, it can be granulose, it can be warty, as I was saying, or it can have a reticulate kind of pattern, or it can be spiny as well, right? Now we are going to start NPC system of classification. So what is the system of classification? That is the pollen types. Sorry, the pollen types can be categorized into different types depending on based on this NPC system of classification, which was proposed by Erdmann and Straka in the year 1961 and is still accepted. Okay, so it's a very old system of pollen classification which is even followed till date. So NPC stands for N stands for number, P stands for position, and C stands for character of aperture. Okay, so this is the NPC system of classification, which is used to categorize the pollen grains that you observe under the microscope, right? So here, if you look at the number, so these are the different types of categorization which are there. So it can be mono. So number means, so basically these NPC system of classification is depending on the type of aperture. So what is aperture? Aperture is actually a hole, like it's an opening kind of. It's actually an, you can see, a pattern or design which is found on the sporoderm of pollen, the outermost layer, and based on that you can classify the pollens. So these apertures are very crucial to be observed on pollen grains, and they are found in different numbers. They're available in different numbers, or at different positions on the pollen grain, as well as their characters could be different. Okay, so I'll come to that one by one. So we start with number of apertures. So it can be the, as you can see in the diagram, so there can be a single aperture. Okay, I'll just zoom the diagram so that it's more clear to you. Can you see this? Is it clear enough? Okay. So if you look at the number, like this category, so you see that again here, the best way to remember is mono aperturate, means there is a single aperture present on the pollen. Usually we are talking about the exine part, which has got this aperture, the presence of apertures. So based on this, we are categorizing the pollen grain. Okay, so monoaperturate means one. Biaperturate shows the presence of two apertures. Triaperturate means presence of three apertures. Hexa means six. The term hexa, it's the numerical term hexa means six, whereas poly again means multiple. Okay, so the diagram itself is very clear. It explains you the number of apertures, and based on that it has been categorized. Now what about the positions? So these apertures can be present at different positions on the pollen grain. So in case they are present at the polar region, it's called polar. Simply if it's present at the equatorial region, then it's called equatorial. What about global? Global or panto-aperturate means it's present globally, like throughout. Okay, it is scattered and present throughout the pollen grain. So this was positions, and we come to the third category, which is character. So there are three characters of these apertures which might be which might help you to categorize them. One is the pores. Okay, so they appear as circular structures or circular holes, or pores basically are all circular in nature. So they can be pores, they can be colpi. Colpi means they appear like, lens, a lens shaped opening on the outermost layer of the pollen. So exactly as it is shown in the diagram, they'll appear as this. And what is colporate? Colporate means it's actually a combination of pores and colpi. That is, you would see that the architecture is such that there is this kind of lens shaped opening as well as a circular opening in the center. So these were the broad number, position, and character types, which based on which the aperture. These are the characteristics of apertures based on which they are classified according to the NPC system of classification. Okay, so now what will happen if, how to classify them now? So suppose you know that, look at this example. Suppose you know that the pollen grain has three apertures which are distributed at equal distance along the equatorial line. So in that case, how will you name the pollen grain? So in that case, the pollen grain, because it has three apertures, it's called tri, right? So see, three apertures is called tri. So it's like, you will have to term it as tri. It's present at the equatorial region, so it's called zono, because equatorial has also another name, that is zono aperturate, as written here. So trizono. And what about the character? So as you can see that it is, they are saying that pollen which you're observing has actually colpi sort of, uh, you know uh, character of aperture. So the pollen grain will be termed as trizonocolpate. So this is a combination of number, position, and character of the pollen grain. Right? So this is how, based on this NPC system of classification, you are naming a pollen grain. And once you get the name, you can categorize it into, other parts. So you can categorize to which pollen grain actually it belongs to, which type, and if you can identify the uh, plant family, you can do that. Okay. So is it clear so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So now we come to fertilization. So basically, fertilization, as we all spoke about, is the fusion of male-female gamete. For ultimately, we need to reach the zygote formation, and that's the ultimate product of this process, right? So here, as you can see, so we'll not be getting into the detail of this, but then just look at the diagram. I'm just zooming it for your ease of understanding. Okay, so as we are proceeding towards fertilization, you would see that there is formation of this pollen tube from the pollen, right? Because the pollen, the male gamete, it has to reach the female gametophyte. It has to reach the eggs, okay, for the fusion. So therefore, the formation of the pollen tube is very essential. So just look at this. So the pollen tube is actually formed, and the uh, male gametes, they divide, and they actually, the two male gametes, they are actually moving into through the pollen tube. Okay. Okay. Now look at the male gametophyte. Sorry, female gametophyte. So can anyone tell me what are essentially the cells in the female gametophyte? Any one of you?
Ma'am, one egg cell,
Yes.
two antipodal cells, I guess. Not sure.
Three.
Three.
Three, okay. And
One
two,
egg cell
Yes, one egg cell. Yes. What
and two
else?
synergate cells.
two synergic
Synergid
cells,
cells, right?
two polar nuclei,
And what else?
male
And two
gametes.
polar nuclei.
Polar nuclei. So you can see there are polar nuclei of the central cell, right? Okay. So what else comes in the external part? These were the cells. Okay. Now what about what all can you see in the other parts of the female gametophyte?
The outer and the inner integument, the
Right.
micropylar, the chalazal end, the
Yes, the micropylar opening. So
Uniculum,
the funicular hilum,
yes, that is actually the stalk kind of structure. Yes. So what about the micropyle? What is the role of the micropyle? Hmm?
ma'am, the
Yes.
pollen, the gametes enter through that, I guess.
Yes,
So,
yes. Right. Absolutely right. Thank you. So you all know the different parts now of the female gametophyte, right? So, so what are these? Now we are moving towards double fertilization. So why is it called double fertilization? A very characteristic of angiosperms. So any one of you can explain me what is double fertilization and why is it so called?
Ma'am, it's called double fertilization because, first of all, the fusion of both male and female gamete also occurs, which is also known as syngamy, and then there's the triple fusion.
Right. And what does this triple fusion form?
It is
primary
the
endosperm,
vegetative part that is responsible for feeding the reproductive part.
Yes, who said endosperm?
Roll number 9.
Yeah.
me.
Yes, right. So it is actually leading to the formation of the endosperm, right? Okay. So that's why it's called double fertilization because there are basically two types of fusion which is taking place in this process. Okay. See. Okay. So see the polar nuclei is fusing to the one of the male gametes, right? So this is forming the triploid, it's forming the 3N endosperm. Okay, so this is one fusion or and the other one is like where the sperm and the egg cell are they are forming, they're fertilizing and they're forming the zygote, right? So it is forming 2N, right? So you all know this part, so that is fine. Now, yes, we have so now the seeds, once the seeds are formed, so we need to know how they are dispersed. So there are different ways in which seeds are dispersed. So they can be dispersed by wind. You can go by the examples in case of milkweed, dandelion, or maple. So they have seed-like structure. The seeds actually have wing-like structures which help them to get dispersed by wind. So seeds travel by wind in case of milkweed, dandelion, or maple, and so on. They can be dispersed by animals as well, as you can see in sandbur, in blackberry. They can be dispersed by water, as you can see in lotus or even coconut. Coconut is a very common example of seed dispersal by water, and which we even study in our lower classes, right? Then by bursting open also, like there are certain seeds which they are burst open and they are actually scattered in with the force of that. So this is there in witch hazel, in violet, in jewel wheat also. and seeds can also be dispersed by us or by humans, that in that sense. So in case of beans, wheat, or cherry, they might get attached to any of the clothing, or and get dispersed in that way. Okay. So what are the basic differences between angiosperms and gymnosperms? So angiosperms are flowering plants that produce fruits enclosing the seeds, right? So, but in gymnosperms, we know that they have naked seeds. So what do you mean by naked? Naked means that it doesn't have a covering or a on it. So therefore, it is called naked seeds, in this, which is a very characteristics of gymnosperm, right? So this is something which is the main difference between gymnosperm and angiosperm, right? As per the terminology suggests, also you can see that gymnos means naked, and sperms comes from the, it refers to seeds here. So they are basically, it's a Greek term, it's derived from a Greek term which means naked seeds itself. So the name itself suggests you the difference between gymnosperm from angiosperms, right? Then angiosperms, they produce flowers and fruits, and which is not true in case of gymnosperms. And yes, seeds are enclosed, seeds are naked. This is again the same thing. Then, what about double fertilization? Double fertilization is another characteristic of angiosperms itself, but gymnosperms do not seem to show this double fertilization procedure. So this is another important difference between the two. In a case of pollination, in angiosperms, it occurs by various mechanisms, especially by insects and whatever we studied. But in gymnosperms, mostly the pollination takes place using the wind pollination. Okay. Then the male gametes in case of angiosperms, they do not have flagella, and gymnosperms, they might show presence of flagella. In case of angiosperms, we see that there's presence of hardwood, but in case of gymnosperms, we see there is presence of both hardwood as well as softwood. So softwood is a characteristic of gymnosperms, okay? And regarding the production of cones, angiosperms clearly do not show presence of any cones or formation of, they do not produce cones. But in case of gymnosperms, you would see they produce male as well as female cones, right? So these are the basic differences between angiosperms and gymnosperms. Now we are talking about angiosperm evolution. So Darwin called the origin of angiosperm as a mystery. It's an abominable mystery. So angiosperms originated around 140 million years ago. So during the late Mesozoic, the major branches might have, the Mesozoic, late Mesozoic might bear the common ancestor of the present day angiosperms. So if you're asked about like the origin of angiosperms, you can date them back to the Mesozoic era more or less. Okay. So scientists are still studying the fossils, and they are trying to come up with a more concrete evidence on the uh, angiosperm evolution. But till date, like whatever we have in hand, we can say that they have originated somewhere in the Mesozoic phase. So see this, that so based on molecular analysis, plus there are from the fossils whichever is available. So we've come to this conclusion that probably the angiosperms have originated some sort of during the Mesozoic area. So for now, I think you can uh, write it as Mesozoic to be the origin of angiosperms. But as on when it will be revised, we can get a better, specification on that note. So regarding the angiosperms, so you look at this branches. For now, you don't know phylogeny, so I will be explaining it to you in a greater detail later on. But as for now, to understand this figure, okay, look at this figure. Is this visible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so as you can see, so starting from the bottom, you can see that these are the most primitive, and then we are moving on to the most advanced, categories towards the upper side. Okay, so here you see the origin of seeds has started somewhere in the gymnosperm, when the gymnosperms were developing, and because before gymnosperms we did not find the presence of seed, okay, proper seed. So from gymnosperms we have seen that how seeds have started developing and evolving, and gradually they have developed this coating on them and in the form of a fruit, so the fruit formation develops during the formation or an evolution of the angiosperms. Okay, so some of the earliest or primitive angiosperms are amborella. So amborella is, you can say that it is a connection in between the gymnosperm and angiosperm. So it's one of the most primitive angiosperms. So you can remember this name, amborella. And gradually you can see that the different orders and have come up of angiosperms, and this has led us to the modern day dicot plant. So the monocots have been believed to have originated before the dicot plants that are available today. So the most advanced are the eudicots, which we are going to study during our classification, when we are studying classification system. So in a nutshell, this was about the evolution of angiosperms. Okay. So is it clear so far, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it is clear. Okay. So I will take down the attendance today. So roll number 1,
Ma'am.
roll number 2,
Yes, ma'am.
roll number 3, 4. 4 is present. 5.
Yes, ma'am.
Present, ma'am.
Okay, 5 is there. 6, 7, 8,
Present, ma'am.
9,
Yes, ma'am.
10, 11,
Present, ma'am.
12, 13, 14, 15,
Present, ma'am.
16,
14 is present, ma'am.
14 is
Yes, ma'am.
okay, 13 is present. Okay, 15,
Yes, ma'am.
16,
Yes, ma'am.
17,
Ma'am.
17, 18, 18, 19, 20,
Present, ma'am.
21, 22.
Yes, ma'am.
सर कितना स्ट्रेंथ है फर्स्ट ईयर में 82, 22, 23, 23, 24,
Present, ma'am.
25,
Present, ma'am.
26, 27,
Present, ma'am.
okay, 28, 29, 30, 31. Any more? Anyone I've left out? 32. Roll number 3, 6, 7, 10, 12, 17, 18, 19. Any one of this present? 21, 23.
Ma'am, I'm present, ma'am. Roll number 6.
Roll number 6, okay. 26, 28.
Roll number
Ma'am, roll
7.
number 20 is also present.
Roll number 7. Roll number 20.
Yes, ma'am, present, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Okay, students. Okay, students, thank you for attending the class. You can please dismiss.